Nobody's doing any squatting. And if anything, I think Labour is overreaching and sounding just a little bit, dare I say, complacent and arrogant, bearing in mind the fact we still have a long way to go in this election campaign.
That statement by Rishi Sunak ruling out, or all but ruling out, a May general election, meaning we should be expecting to head to the polls in the autumn.
My working assumption is we'll have a general election in the second half of this year. And in the meantime, I've got lots that I want to get on with. This Saturday, we'll be introducing a significant tax cut for millions of people in work, worth on average £450 for an average worker. Because we've halved inflation, we want to keep managing the economy well and cutting people's taxes. And I want to keep tackling illegal migration. And we cut the number of arrivals last year by over a third, but we've got more to do. And we want to get the Rwanda scheme through Parliament and up and running. So look, I've got plenty to get on with, and that's what I'm focused on doing, delivering for the British people. And it's great to be talking to people here in the East Midlands about that progress today.
Rishi Sunak earlier. Another Labour leader, Keir Starmer, effectively previewed Labour's election campaign in Bristol today.
The first lever that we want to pull, the first place we will go, is growth in our economy. Because that's what's been missing for 14 years. Without growth, we won't have the money to run our public services, to provide what is desperately needed. So that's why we've put all of our focus on growth and on the economy. Now, where we are going to make adjustments to tax, we've been really clear about what that looks like. So we've said what we're going to do with VAT on private schools, the non-dom status, the loopholes that we have. So where we are making adjustments, we've been very, very clear about it. And as Pat McFadden said this morning on the media, any tax cuts have to be fair and affordable, and we have to be realistic about that. But I think the place to go is to growth on this.
Now, Starmer said Labour was ready for power.
There is one thing that we can be sure is coming this year, and I'm ready for it. The thought of millions of people right across our country putting a cross on that ballot paper. It's what we've been waiting for, preparing for, fighting for. A year of choice, a chance to change Britain, a clock that is ticking on this government.
The Prime Minister has not repeated the mistake of Gordon Brown in two respects. One, he didn't dither about the election date like Gordon Brown did in 2007. And two, contrary to Keir Starmer's assertion that the Prime Minister is squatting in Downing Street, the Prime Minister and the Conservatives have a mandate that was given to them by the British people less than 5 years ago. Nobody's doing any squatting. And if anything, I think Labour is overreaching and sounding just a little bit, dare I say, complacent and arrogant, bearing in mind the fact we still have a long way to go in this election campaign.
Yeah, of course, that answer does imply that we're going to see, a certain amount of delivery over these coming months before the election. In your seat, just by way of example, Robert, you've got a majority there, which would mean that a 5% swing would hand your seat to Labour. And the way the polls are looking, that looks like a tough fight. You'll be glad to have more time to campaign in what will be a tough one.
Well, look, I've been campaigning in this seat for 20 years, John, and no election has ever been an easy one for me. I won the seat from Labour in 2010, and I've held it with majorities of varying sizes, none big in my time. And therefore, I'm always campaigning and dealing with local issues. I've got a big bins collection issue here in Swindon at the moment. The Labour Council don't seem to be doing very well on that. So I'm very busy answering residents' concerns about refuse collection, amongst all the other things I'm doing. So this is...
Robert, are you going to hold your seat on arguing about bins and potholes?
Well, I'm going to take every issue up on behalf of my constituents and make sure that their voice is heard loud and clear, as I've done for the last 15 years or 14 years or so, bringing investment in to Swindon. I'm under no illusion, John. This is going to be a hard fight. Of course it is.
Now, so tell me that. What do you think is going to tilt the odds in the Conservatives' favour? I mean, growth. All the projections is that growth is going to be pretty much flat throughout the year. And people are still hurting from higher taxes and the cost of living. You need a game changer. What on earth is that going to be?
Well, look, I think that the government's progress on the economy has been very solid. Inflation is going absolutely in the right direction. Of course, that's a key indicator for businesses and households. And there is, I think, certainly some very interesting news on the mortgage front, where we're seeing quite a competitive mortgage market at the moment, which is leading to, although increases in mortgage rates, not to the levels that many people feared they would be. That would be the case. And over the last few years, we've seen growth predictions being consistently more pessimistic than the reality. So I think 2024 will be a year of progress for the economy.
So why, Robert, is Labour leading on the economy, which was always your party's strong suit?
Well, look, I think like all governments, it's sometimes very, very difficult when people are feeling the pinch to convince people that we deserve their support, and that's why oppositions benefit. I think mid-term. Now we're coming close to the end of this Parliament now, but I think that, and the history will teach us all, that these sort of poll leads are never the reality when it comes to an election campaign. Wasn't the case in '97. Labour, of course, won a big majority in that year, but their poll leads were much narrower than the ones they enjoyed earlier on in that term. And I think we'll see a similar narrowing this year. And the Prime Minister, whenever he calls the election, he might call it, as John Major did just before the end of that 5-year term in 1992, at a time when people are feeling that the economy is going in the right direction, and that things will be very different later in the year than they feel maybe in the latter part of 2023.
Well, I guess we will see. Just the last one from you. I've always thought of you, Robert, don't mind saying, as a fairly decent sort of bloke and politician. I wonder what you think of all the personal, ugly campaigning that's going on at the moment. We're seeing Keir Starmer targeted over his record as a lawyer, defending, for example, wrong-uns in the past. I mean, you are a very experienced King's Counsel. Is that kind of thing fair? Isn't that what lawyers do?
Well, lawyers will take their cases according to the cab rank rule, like taxi drivers picking up.
So it's not fair, Robert. That's not fair.
I think that, that sort of politics, and I see it coming in the other direction about Rishi Sunak's background, all the stuff that's thrown at him.
It's ugly, though. It's ugly, isn't it?
I don't like it. It's not my style of politics. I take the FDR, the Franklin Delano Roosevelt approach to politics. If you start naming your opponent, you just give them more publicity. That's why I think it's very important to concentrate on what we as Conservatives have to offer. And I'm looking to a positive election campaign where we're talking about the economy, about building the houses that young people need, and looking ahead to the next half of the 2020s as a time for real progress in our country as we develop a greener economy, an economy which more people can share in, and a simplified and clearer tax system that avoids some of the marginal rates that are affecting many people who I don't think any of us would consider are people of great wealth. And I think it's that sort of Conservative approach that will win us votes once again, as we've done in previous elections, and continuing that message, which I think was important at the last election, about levelling up and about increasing the investment that we've seen in infrastructure across our country.
A good taste of what's coming our way. Robert Buckland, always good to hear your voice. Thank you. The former Justice Secretary and Conservative MP for South Swindon.